You're listening to The Present Professional.
Get quiet to live loud.
Aligned action or a distraction. Those are the two options.
It's the best thing you can do for humanity.
A podcast for leaders navigating the human experience. Brought to you by Humessence. And I'm your host, John Marshall. Welcome to another episode of The Present Professional, where we explore the best ways to lead ourselves, to lead others. Today, I'm honored to welcome Margaret Moore, also known as Coach Meg, to the show. She's a pioneer in the field of coaching with a remarkable journey that began in the biotech industry before she became one of the world's leading voices in health and leadership coaching. In 2000, she founded Well Coaches Corporation, which has since trained over 16,000 coaches across 50 countries. One of those is me. She went on to co-found the Institute of Coaching at McLean Hospital, helping to integrate science across coaching disciplines and funding vital research. Coach Meg also co-founded the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching, setting national standards and pathways for certification and reimbursement of coaching services in healthcare. Beyond her leadership in building institutions, she's the co-author of over 30 scientific articles, 10 book chapters, and several influential books, including Organize Your Mind, Organize Your Life, and Organize Your Emotions, Optimize Your Life. Her latest book, The Science of Leadership, 9 Ways to Expand Your Impact, is out now. Margaret's work has shaped not only a field of health and wellness coaching, but also how we think about leadership, well-being, and the science of change. I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Our listeners are going to be so excited and so nourished by what you have to share, even just from getting the prompt to buy this book. From what I said was what feels like a handbook for human-centered leadership. So thank you for being with us, Coach Meg. I want to just hand it over to you to tell anything that I missed in the introduction and welcome yourself to the audience.
Well, thank you, John. It's just a complete joy to be here. And I just want to riff off the word nourish, because we were talking about Taoism before, and one of the Tao readings, there are 64 of them, is on nourishment, nourishing mind, nourishing body, nourishing your soul. And I think that's a really good way to describe the best kind of leadership, that you both, we live in a capitalist world, so we are in need of creating more and more prosperity for the system to be stable. I mean, the economy is built on it, so we can't, we just don't want to destroy what is creating livelihoods for, supporting 8 billion people on this planet. So we need to respect that. But the message of the science and the scientists that have been working for 40 years, the science of leadership is new in historical terms, but basically the message is that as a leader, your role is to nourish while you produce prosperity, that we grow wealth and well-being together. We don't consume well-being to grow wealth. So nourish is a really, I've not used that word for this book, but I think that is it. We are nourishing ourselves, because we can't nourish others in a system if we're not well nourished. And so I think that's a really good place to start.
Beautiful. And with that, when it comes to, I would almost say that it's, producing through nourishing, not even just beforehand, that it's, what I've noticed even in my own coaching practice and even my own company is that the more that I focus on, right, nourishing the vision, myself, my people, the more that I see clients focus on that, I feel like the more the organization, the team themselves become more productive and integrated.
Right. So it's not just a resource, you're saying,
Yeah,
it's actually the process.
exactly.
The work to create prosperity and well-being is to nourish. It's like it's if we think of ourselves as farmers or gardeners, tending to growing things, and in our case, people are more complicated than carrots. So it's not
Certainly.
that simple to grow, but it is this sense of creating the conditions for
Mm.
growth, and being an active part of that. So yeah, very nice.
Creating the conditions. I think that takes us into a whole other space as well, because it's not even a focus on what I need to do per se for this particular person, but it's, how am I, and focusing on myself, nourishing myself, influencing the conditions that I'm creating for my team, my organization. So I think that even a big part of this podcast, and really starting with ourselves, right, to then lead others, and looking at the book, and I'm assuming that there is some hierarchy to the 9 ways. So just for the listeners that haven't picked up the book just yet, the nine headings are conscious, authentic, agile, relational, positive, compassionate, shared, servant, and transformational. And with that, I'm assuming that there is an intentionality behind conscious being the first one.
Right, and transformational being the last one. Yeah. I mean, this 9 um is having mapped all the main personality models to this, can be sorted in a lot of different ways. So I don't want people to get the sense that there is one that is better than the others, because I think there are 9 numbers. The
Hmm.
body is made up of largely a finite number. If you group a few things together, you get to 9. It's almost like a natural order, that it takes this diversity to create a whole. So you can't single one out. They work together. And in that sense, they're probably, in terms of humans function and human society. I mean, if you look at different countries have different personality types, if you balance it all out, we're kind of balanced as a world, in
Hmm.
terms of the wholeness. And so but in leadership, so when you're leading yourself, or others, or you're in if you're in a playful moment with kids, they're not that conscious. They're largely subconscious. So you might as well just forget about being conscious and flow with the play, right? So I,
Yes.
I just want to point out that there is no magic to this. But I think in terms of leading is the most complex human activity, leaving aside complex intellectual activities. But I mean, in terms of mobilizing people and moving forward to some greater place of prosperity and nourishment, it's really complicated, because you have to manage yourself. You have to interact with, just like we are, individual others or teams all day long. And then through that, you're impacting the system that's beyond the others. And you have to be
Hmm.
awake to all those 3 levels across 9 different ways of operating all the time. So I just want to point out, this isn't easy. And that's why people they get attached to, well, I'm a servant leader, or I'm an agile leader, or I'm a, blah, blah, blah leader. And the point of, one point of the book is that that's not enough. The whole
Hmm.
idea that you just work to your strengths and forget about your weaknesses isn't the answer. That might have been the answer when we weren't strong enough. But once you know your strengths and you've built on them, then you need to diversify and you need to broaden out and you need to do more of other things. It's like I play piano and I love jazz. And so it's like you need the whole keyboard. You need the whole set of instruments. You need the whole, so the reason that conscious is first in leadership is because you do have to be awake. I mean awake, not thinking, not feeling, just awake. That state of being present, which isn't mindfulness because we're not observing anything and we're not in flow. We're simply awake to the moment, like just all here. And it's an old ability. I mean, animals have it, just being here. So you got to start there because if you're not awake, you're not going to pick up the signals that you need in order to know what to do next because every moment is new and you never know until you're there. You might have a theory and you got a plan, you got an agenda, you've got it all mapped out, but then you get there and you've got whatever is there. And so then you have to be awake. And then the last one is transformation because there's no point. I mean, I get servant leadership. I love it. But I think the purpose of work is to transform and make things better. It's not, everything else is in service of transformation. And transformation goes better and faster and smoother with less friction and strain if you have all the 9 that come before. So that's why we staged it so that transformation was last.
I knew there was an art to that.
Well, that is the art.
Yep.
Transformation is the art. Yeah.
And you brought up nature as well. There's a quote from the author of Cathedral of the Wild. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something that stuck with me, that nature always is where it is, right? Lions will rest for hours in perfect stillness and then awake to hunt with this intense ferocity. But they're never hunting wishing they were resting or resting thinking about hunting, that they are where they are. So I would say that not even just nature has that, but I think nature is a great example of what being awake really is to the moment.
Yeah.
So that just something that really stuck with me there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when I train on this, I use a picture of it's actually a tiger just looking at you.
Yeah.
You look at it and say, is this tiger here? I think so. I might not be, but I think it's here and it knows it's here. And it's a
Certainly.
in the organize your mind work, the sensory. I mean, all we're talking about is experiencing versus thinking. Awakeness is being in an experiencing mode, which means you're in a receiving mode. You're receiving the stimuli, you're not sending. So it's just experiencing, not so. And that's where Myers-Briggs has this nice, perceiving versus judging. Our human mind, in order to, we've just evolved to have this, and I don't mean judgmental in terms of being critical. I mean, we're just having to evaluate. The brain is constantly evaluating. I mean, it's designed to evaluate the moment. And do you have the resources to meet the demands of the moment? That's its purpose. And so is our internal activity. So the opposite of that is not to be in that activity, is to be awake and experiencing. And so they're mutually exclusive. In terms of regions of the brain, they're exactly the opposite from the frontal to the back. Experiencing is all about here. So it's not a natural place, especially if your frontal thinking is overwhelmed by the amount of activity that we have in today's world. So yeah, so conscious is that. I mean, in the literature, there's not a lot of literature on conscious leadership, but we reorganize the literature considerably. So the conscious leadership is actually more about values and virtues and using business, back to John's, what's the guy that founded Whole Foods? His book on conscious capitalism is all about, doing business to do good. We put that in authentic leadership because that's where the values and virtues live in the
Hmm.
research. So we used conscious to use the first half of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness and self-regulation, because self-awareness and awareness are consciousness. And then regulation is to regulate the part of you that's not the subconscious,
Hmm.
that's active. You want to regulate that. You want to set it aside so that you can perceive. And
Hmm.
it takes it beyond mindfulness. Because
Mm.
again, our mindfulness is paying attention and observing, but that's not the same as pure receiving.
Yes.
In fact,
Yes.
there is a form of mindfulness called open experiencing, open
Hmm.
awareness. So that it's one of, but then there's other kinds. There's focused awareness. There's other things. So we need to be a little more discerning about where our brains are at in these different activities. And I think we're just trying to get people to realize that being awake is being aware.
Hmm. And then, moving into the regulation part of it, I feel like I spend a lot of time with my leaders, with my clients on regulation. And it's a lot of things that they're not aware of. I would often pause and ask my clients if they noticed a certain way they were telling me about something, a certain
Exactly.
way they were telling me a story. Did you notice, like, the movement of your hands, how much you were leaning forward, and they start becoming aware of things, right, that were subconscious. And a lot of the time we spend on, what are the ways that they can help regulate the mind with the body. So sometimes I'll ask them would you be open to repeating that story to me, but keeping your hands on the table the whole time?
Yeah, yeah, coming from this. So the body
Yep.
does have the
Mhm.
stillness. The body
Mhm.
is, you know, the body is basically just operating, doing its thing. Cells are
Mhm.
doing their cycles, and the blood's doing its thing, and the breathing's doing its thing, and it's just got this natural rhythm. It's a real system that's in
Mhm.
tune or not. And when we can breathe, then we can tap into it. It's already there. We just have to
Yep.
tap into it. Yeah.
Exactly. And vice versa. Help it tap into, supporting the mind in certain ways and changing the mind. But I know we could dive, so much deep. We could do a whole episode on
Each one,
consciousness,
yeah. Yes, yeah. So
right?
where do you wanna go next?
Easily. So whenever it comes to the science of leadership, like the moment that you knew that this could be an operating system, right? I'm sure that you had exposure to, right, and a lot of experience with all of the models, like you mentioned, the different personality models, integrating all of the research you had been reviewing. So, what was that moment that you knew that this could all come together to be an operating system for leadership? And how has that realization changed or shifted your own leadership?
Well, I appreciate you, reflecting that this is an operating system because 'cause I've not used that term, and it's actually a great one. Um, you know, I was stuck on one of the models, and when I find this is actually the same one I was stuck on, which is my own Enneagram type. I was stuck on one of the models and where it fit, and when I realized what it was, then I realized, "Oh, I've got the whole thing down." So, um, and, I have to call out the Well Coaches community because we did a survey on book titles, and the science of leadership was actually just thrown in there by our editor. It wasn't a serious idea that we would attempt to capture the entirety of the leadership science. But that was what everybody wanted. 67% of people put that first. Our goal was going to be self-transforming leadership. So the first thing was the push to do that. And I still didn't agree to do that. And then the editor told us 3 months later that we'd done it. And that's because so it was a calling to do it. I didn't go looking to do that. I wanted it to be about self-transformation, which is very important. But what happened by having the request do the entirety of the science of leadership, that pushed me. And so it pushed me hard. It meant that I had to read hundreds of papers and I had to sit basically one every week and a half or so. So I would sit with 30 papers. I did a lot of searching or sorting, and I would sit with them and I would pull out pieces of the scientific papers and I would put them on, I had a big screen and I would look at it and say, okay, where do I start? And where does this take me? And I let the science take me from where it, in its natural beginning. And that's not the way most leadership experts work. They usually have their own sense of what they think it is, their frameworks. And then and that's by observation too, but and then they bring the research in to support that. And they often there's lots of fabulous frameworks out there, but this was not meant to be that. We were not imposing our own framework. I basically, other than, putting it into these 9, which was a way of sorting them. But the research then fell into place as we went through it. And the one I was stuck on was shared leadership because I didn't know where that one is new. And it's about, there's lots of different terms for it. Relational leadership. And we used relational leadership to describe relationships, not that a leadership system is a system of relationships. So there's a collective leadership, distributed leadership. So there's this shared. And when I finally realized that was the achiever, the wind, that was actually how leaders make things happen is through sharing leadership. Then I got, okay. That was the missing for me. That was the thing I didn't quite understand, that in order to achieve, you have to share, which means other people have to learn how to lead. And then your role as a leader is in fact understanding the gap between what you know about where to go and what they know, and closing that gap so that they can see it, more of what you can see and others can see. Because you don't get to be a leader if you don't see further ahead and have a better sense of where to go. That's why you're a leader, because you have a vision of what you think needs to happen that doesn't exist today. That's why leaders are leaders and followers are followers. The leaders see it and others don't. And they just don't. They have often the same access to the same facts, or they just haven't, sat in a place where they got access to everything that they needed. But leaders are position themselves to get access to everything they need in order to see where to go forward. But then you have all these people who don't get it, don't agree with it, don't understand it, are not sure that's the right way to go, have 10 reasons why it won't work, which is why you have a system, because all those people are showing you all the problems that you have to solve in order to get there. And maybe the vision changes. But so sharing leadership is the hardest by far, because it's easy to see what you see, but how you get others to see it and then own it and make it their own. That, I think, is the hardest one. And it's the one that is the newest. And it requires a subtlety that's not just about being in charge and being smarter than everybody else and being authoritative. It's actually understanding how everybody can learn to move forward. So we've written an article on this. I've written it for 3 different publications and it's been turned down 3 times because I framed it around sharing leadership with AI. And I really think that there's an allergy around sharing leadership, around how to implement AI, because there's a sense that we don't know what's going to happen to the humans that are part of our organization and whether they'll still have jobs. And so we're not really sharing the process as well as we should be. And so I think it's the real deal. And then you realize everything else is about sharing everything else, right? Now you have the other 8, and how do you share those? So yeah, I think that was when I realized, this is system.
We could also do another episode on everything that you just shared. This, and the first part of that really interests me is how you mentioned part of your own type, and the achiever energy led to the kind of the polarity of sharing that, of actually achieving through sharing, as opposed to I achieve, so I'm the leader, now I can share. It's actually reframing the whole type 3 energy as I achieve through others versus
But we
differentiating
all achieve.
myself, looking different,
We
right?
all achieve. Yeah. We all
Exactly.
achieve together. We don't,
Mhm.
that's the human way. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing you said that comes up a lot in my coaching sessions is creating ownership. Is like the actual, so the act of sharing is not just sharing your vision, but it's how do you get your people, how do you get your organization, your peers to not just buy into your vision, but take ownership over their part of it, and even the whole, right? I feel like I spend a lot of time working with leaders on this notion of how to create ownership, have a
Right.
culture of accountability,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how people buy
Very
into that
issue.
vision.
Yeah.
And then it leads me to this kind of leader as a coach mentality, because, right, as a coach, through via intrinsic motivation and creating autonomy, like we help clients take ownership over their vision, their lives. So it makes me end up helping leaders take on a coach mentality to help them create that ownership. But I just want to pause there and ask you the question: how do leaders create the environment to help their people take ownership?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when when we talk about, so let's talk about engagement, because I think
Mm,
that's a word that everybody understands and we know it's a problem. And 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 then engagement in setting direction. Because if you're part of an organization and you weren't engaged in in setting the direction it's going in, and you're disengaged, right? You're disengaged because you're not part of it. And there's vision, there's purpose, there's strategy, there's implementation. There's lots of parts to the direction. And not everybody will participate in all of the parts. Richard Rummel writes about strategic leadership as something that is done by a small group of people because it's so complex and so messy that most people won't get it. And so there are times when you can't engage everybody because you barely are hanging on to your with your fingernails, let alone trying to bring everybody along. Um, I like to use the word strategy, because strategy is, okay, you sort of decide where you're going to go, but how are you going to get there? That's where you can engage a lot of people. And the main thing then, and not everybody is a strategic thinker. In fact, a lot of people are not strategic thinkers. So I think if we think about helping people become more strategic, and I think coaching is strategic. We don't name that as coaches, but we're very strategic. We're very thoughtful about what we're doing now, what we're going to do next, and why we're doing it, and where it's going to take people. And so there's this idea of being strategic in every moment, which requires being conscious,
mm,
because strategy you have to have a strategy. You have to be awake to the fact that the one you came in with may not be the one that works, and you have to be adjusting your strategy. So that requires a lot of intellect and a lot of awareness at the same moment. So I think the engagement is about engaging people in the setting of the direction and the strategy to get there. And if we do that, then you're not asking the question, do people own it? Because they do. You engage them, part of it. If they don't, they're not, if they didn't engage, they barely understand it, then they're just taking a paycheck and they don't really like what you're doing, or they disagree with it, or they throw stones at it. So you really have to actually intentionally engage people in the setting of direction. You might know 90% of it, but you need to give them a chance to bring, a good amount, as much as they can. And then they're engaged, and now they're thinking. Now they're thinking better. They're planning their street. So you're
Mhm.
basically you're teaching people how to think strategically.
Beautiful.
And that's,
So
I think,
there's not this.
real,
Go ahead.
it's
Sorry.
real engagement. Yeah, and I
Mm.
don't think we're there yet. I'm finding that that's the one. Like the 2 workshops I've done where I've actually had people rank the 9. This is the one that's the lowest.
Mm. Wow.
It's hard. It's hard to train, because you don't. Are you mentoring? Are you teaching? Are you training? Are you coaching? Are you
Hmm.
leading? You have a lot of options. How do you bring people along? And it's not about them following you, because then they're not engaged. Then maybe they love you for now and they follow you because they want to, but they have to actually feel engaged. And that's
It's
that's why coaching, maybe that's why we both came from leadership into coaching and probably back into leadership, because somehow we knew that this was the way we needed to help people. And the world needs more of this. My concern is that engagement gets tied into, HR policies and like a bunch of stuff that's not that important. Like let's have a wellness
exactly.
committee and engage people in wellness. A committee on what else? Something that is not central to the direction. But let's engage people in this. That it's not really our top 5 strategic priorities, but then they'll be engaged. I think we just need to like admit that we're all trying to figure out the right direction, and we all have
Mm.
a stake in it. And let's engage people in that.
Yes. Yes. There's there's so much there's so much that we could talk about on this. And I think just right there, the advice I'm hearing is bring people along in in the best way, the earliest that you can, and the most involved way that you can, without really breaking your strategic process. Like you
Yeah, well,
said,
you
it
have
can
to kind of
start with a
step
small
back
group,
and
but
you have
then
to
when
yeah, yeah.
mhm,
You slow
when can we
down to
bring them
speed
in?
up. You slow down to speed up, yeah. Because you have
Yes.
to pick up, if you don't do that, the great thing about involving people, I've learned this the hard way, because I'm perfectly happy to run things. Come up with a strategy and run. But when you get all the naysayers and you think, I can't believe you know, really? You're really your intellectual reaction is, "Oh, I can't believe I have to slow down to deal with this." But I've learned over and over and over again, when someone says, "This is not gonna work because blah, blah, blah," really pay attention to that, because it is a barrier.
Hmm.
And if you don't integrate it into into the strategy, then your strategy will be incomplete, and it'll bite you later.
Right.
So the
Because
slowing down to pick up and to respect all of the naysayers, realizing that the ship isn't balanced if they haven't settled, and you haven't settled their concerns, because there's usually some kernel of something you need to know. And I guess that's the other benefit of sharing, is that it slows you down and you can't believe the stuff that comes up. And, it's really, it's, it's really an uphill climb to get through it. But if you welcome it and you open to it and you say, okay, this is the 9, the 9, which is the compassion in the book,
mm,
the ability to integrate and respect the needs and everybody, and weave that in. That's the basis of strategy. It's diversity creates strategy. It's not just a tagline. It
mm,
really does. And the best
I agree.
strategy has been pressure tested by all the naysayers. And then you have a strategy that, is it going to satisfy every single person all the time? No, but people will recognize that you did everything possible to consider all the downsides and all the issues and challenges. And then it's
Yep.
baked into the thing. And then people can see their fingerprints on it. So yeah, so the sharing brings them along and engages them, but it also produces better direction. And I guess that's a good place to pull those two things together for leadership.
Yes. Then, the naysayers don't exist in a vacuum. If there's one,
Well,
there's
they're
if
picking up
there's
something's
multiple.
not quite right. Yeah,
Hmm.
they're sensing
And
some. You're not.
but and you bring up one really last important area I wanted to get your take on was this area of compassion, right? Being a servant leader, right? Being a relational leader, like having this compassionate resonance. And in an environment where leaders are being constantly pressured, right? The market's getting constantly more competitive. Deadlines are getting cut shorter. Resources are being cut back. And I have a lot of time where this is all nice to have. Right? It's nice to bring everybody along, be compassionate and be a servant leader, but ultimately I have to deliver results, right?
We have to deliver results. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's the first thing that I see, get put to the side is like the relationship because we have to focus on delivering results. You know, what do you have to say to the leader that feels like their back's against the wall when it comes to pressure from the board, pressure from up top, pressure from the markets? You're just trying to get ahead. It almost feels like uh, if you've read The Hard Thing About Hard Things before, Ben Horowitz, he refers to it as peacetime CEO and wartime CEO.
Yeah, I have read.
So it's like, right, what do you have to say to the wartime leader
Yeah.
that that the relational part of it is still important
Yeah.
and how they can integrate that into delivering results now?
Yeah. Yeah. So, first, compassion is chapter 6 because it integrates the first 5. So it becomes easy if you're conscious, agile, you care, you're strengthening people. And you're helping people. So it's a composite. It isn't sort of stand by itself. But when there's a lot of stress on you, your ability to show compassion, if you think about compassion in rings, we all only go out so far. Do we go all the way out to the whales in the Pacific? Maybe not, but we might go to our town or our neighbors, right? So the more stress you have, your compassion circle gets smaller. You just don't have any more to give. So you have to start with self-compassion. You really have to go back to nourishing. So this kind of brings us back to where we started. You've got to nourish yourself because you realize if I'm saying I don't have time for this, it's because I don't have the bandwidth. I have nothing to give. Everything's been taken. I don't have enough to give. So you've got to come back and resource and nourish yourself. You must first. So you have to come back to supporting yourself so that you can then help others. Because you're not going to win if you don't have compassion for yourself, because you're not going to have compassion. You're not going to compassion isn't empathy. There's a piece of empathy. Empathy is hard because it's all about actually feeling what other people are feeling, and that is a downward spiral to empathy fatigue. Compassion is understanding, not feeling it, and doing something about it. So it's a different energy, and if you understand it, then you can pull it into your strategy. So you nourish yourself, feel self-compassion, and then you can come back in and feel the compassion for others. And you don't have to cry with them, you don't have to feel their anger, you can't go there. You'll be completely exhausted if you feel all the emotions. You have to separate yourself from the emotion to go to the understanding, the intellectual, the full understanding of this stakeholder really needs this, and this one needs this, and this needs this, and we need to get here. And it will come to you. Your brain, compassion's integrative. It takes all 9 and it integrates it into strategy. It's the beauty of it. It's understanding. It's real understanding. So you have it, but when you're depleted, it goes away. So you've got to renew your own resources, and then it will come back. It will be there when you need it. It really will. You will understand, and you will come back with a strategy that works. Trust that
Beautiful.
once you've nourished yourself.
Yes. Yes. Full circle back to nourishment. Now, as we start to wrap up this conversation here, I just again wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me and to speak to all of our listeners. There are so many little tidbits in here that I want to timestamp and send out to everyone. So I appreciate that. But one more thing for the audience. What's a, call it, 10-minute or less practice that they could start trying this week that would start to align them with this operating system and impact their lives and leadership positively?
Well, I'm going to come back to the bookends again, the conscious and the transformation. So whatever it takes to get you to your true nature of just being here, being present, being all in present, not presence, not radiating out presence. I mean, just being here and experiencing, whatever takes you there, go down in your body, deep breathe. Everybody has their own way. Touch a stone, look at a picture, look outside, go for a walk, whatever. Get yourself forget your worries, forget your to-do list. Just be here. Be I like the picture of the tiger's face looking at you. Be present. And then ask yourself, what's the potential in this moment for something good to happen? Because you can't detect it if you're not present.
Beautiful.
Just do just that.
Beautiful.
And then you can step into the moment being awake and being present to what might be good that can happen. And the rest will take care of itself. You get into your conversation, you get into your agenda. But just be
Yep.
awake to the moment, be present and detect what might shift right now that would be good.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Again, thank you for joining me here. Listeners, we will have links to thescienceofleadership.com in the show notes, and go get the book right now. The Science of Leadership, 9 Ways to Expand Your Impact. It will take you into a full-on journey to the operating system that we discussed today, and you can be nourished by the full expanse of the words, because we could have talked here for the whole day and probably still not covered everything that you can get from that book. So take your time, get out there, thescienceofleadership.com, get your copy today. So again, thank you so much for being listeners. I appreciate you all. I will see you next time on another episode of The Present Professional. Thank you again, Coach Meg.
Thank you, John. It's great.